So you have your lawyer who you trust, who's expert, and they're in the AI conversation. You're not homebrewing at home and then bringing problems to your lawyer. The good news, Artie, is there is a paradigm for this already. So you need a competent attorney to translate their brainware into an expert QA code person who can QA it and make sure it works. So these twin teams is what we're building, but it's helpful to see and observe the medical field in digital.
All right, Cyrus, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Artie, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're an attorney. You've been an attorney for about 22, 23 years, something like that?
That's right. 22 years. I'm in my 23rd year.
Awesome. You've been in the investment industry. You've been in obviously legal, political, and then also AI now.
Right.
For any listeners that might not be familiar with you, can you give a little bit more about your background for them?
Sure. So I'm a guy who was born in Neptune, New Jersey, not the planet, the city. So it's Jersey Shore, if you know that. And when I was young, my family moved to California. I grew up in the Silicon Valley, San Mateo, University of San Francisco, political science. Then I went and worked in politics, and then I worked in finance, and then I worked at a very well-funded startup back east. Then I came back for law school, University of San Francisco, again, School of Law this time. And from there, I basically hung my shingle, was soon adopted into a private equity team platform that was investing in India in 2004, which was very brand new at the time. So several years there as the right hand of the founder, chief legal officer, COO, everything, chief bottle washer, you name it, built the website, investor relations, the whole deal. So did that for several years, then went into technology contracting. So started doing legal work for Fortune 500 who were buying some of the software and technology that I was then familiar with from my previous work. And so we did deals with Broadridge and Autonomy and Mindtree and HP. And so they were large software and technology deals, mainly in India. Then the second half of my career has been in asset management. I've been recruited by family offices to basically act as a strategic officer and or counsel and or board member to handle large and small controversies while seeing to their portfolio from an asset management standpoint. The COVID pandemic changed everything up for all of us. Yeah. So at that point, moved from Lake Tahoe, California to Dallas, Texas, which is an American boomtown, and soon hooked up with one of my clients who's in technology. 2022, he hipped me to AI. And Artie, I took one look in, and I'm not a technologist. I took a look in and just fell in. And so now here we are a couple years hence, and I'm in love with AI because it seems to represent the new incarnation of law, if I just put it that way.
Awesome. I think it could seem a little surprising to see an attorney embracing AI like that, because it's kind of a threat to the industry, the jobs for attorneys to some degree, isn't it?
1,000%. But like things in life, think of fire, think of firearms. There's good and bad. So AI is good and bad in terms of its impact on the legal community. It's going to be positive and negative depending on the attorney's orientation. So if an attorney is really stuck in kind of the old modality of the billable hour, the sit and hold my beer client, don't talk to me, be quiet, pay all your money or you're fired client, that style of lawyering is being replaced, whether they like it or not. It's being replaced because the AI modality is basically an information sifter. And since the law is nothing other than data, it's like 1,000 and more superhighways of opportunity for lawyers. So that's what drew me in. I say, wait, you could see it as competition, or you can see it as an expressway, which it really is, an accelerator, a bionic power for lawyers.
Yeah. I have a kind of a simplistic definition of attorneys. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's not offensive. But when I tell people,
it's a 4-letter word, isn't it, Artie? No, just kidding.
No. I think attorneys, To some degree. I mean, this is definitely an oversimplification, but attorneys are just people with the right knowledge of vocabulary to navigate legal waters. In my opinion, is that
that's a good way to put it. So if we just think about, back in history, the attorney is like a sort of a priest class, if I can use that metaphor. I relate it very often to medicine, right? If we think of our doctors, they are the ones that have a specialized, as you mentioned, nomenclature. They know the words, the language that are like a lock and key. They unlock things. The knowledge of the language will unlock things. Then their experience informs them to scan fact patterns to see what's important in that fact pattern. And so we have relied upon our attorneys to do it for us. But if you go back to the very beginning, Artie, of time, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, there were no attorneys. Attorneys were illegal. People were expected to speak on their own behalf. And the reason was if people had another person speaking for them, it was presumed to be inaccurate. They wanted it from the source, which is a legal principle. But yeah, a lot of change in the air.
Yeah. How did that transition happen? So this is in Rome where attorneys are prohibited. Where do we, if you know, where do we first start seeing attorneys?
Well, so my reading, which is cursory, I'm, not a Rome scholar by any stretch. So the ancient law of Rome had, as I mentioned, the individual speaking on their behalf. The second stage of that was people would have a friend. They'd say, hey, I'm disabled or something. Let my friend speak on my behalf. So it kind of crept into letting someone's family member or friend who happened to have greater facility in language, have my friend speak on my behalf. And then as human nature being what it is, these friends sort of became very frequent. People had the same friends. So people would arise and then you knew there was a fee being taken in the background. Taking money was illegal until it was later legalized. And it was very much prescribed. It was a limited, as a cap on the fee. So that was the early origins of what we see as the law practice, which is very different from today, right? Artie, as I'm just describing it, they've gone into paying another person to speak for you. And now there's a control aspect that we're not familiar with in the recent, and I talk about the last 200 years incarnation of lawyering, where the client is muted and the lawyer says, I'm the priest, let me handle it all. You stay behind the curtain or the whatever.
Yeah. Is there kind of a gatekeeping that happens in the legal realm? Because it seems to me like some things are almost, I'm suspicious sometimes of things being overcomplicated that don't need to be complicated. And to me, that kind of feels like gatekeeping sometimes.
1,000%, 1,000%. If you think about attorney marketing techniques, right? If you probably worked with a lawyer before in the past, almost every first attorney meeting, and clients don't realize because it's practiced, right? So we as attorneys, we're seeing the same iterations over and over again, especially if you're like me, 22 years. You've heard the story about this area of law. And so the attorney clicks into almost their stock speech, right? For lack of a better term, which has been perfected over time. And coincident with that stock speech is always throwing out some of that nomenclature that I talked about. So, you've got this is so a poor client will come to a lawyer. I'm being thrown out of my apartment. The lawyer will say to the poor client, this looks like an unlawful detainer. You've got to, and so the uneducated client will say, oh man, this person has the magic words. So that's a microcosm. On the macro, I've seen the pro bono. I've helped startups. I've helped founders. I've helped small companies, and I've helped on the corporate side investing money into these companies. And the nature of lawyers to use extensive nomenclature, as you say, like barriers, like
Mm-hmm.
gatekeeping. We ruffle our feathers, for lack of a better term, to impress the client that we know things that you don't.
Yeah.
And that's fine because it's accurate. The attorney you're there for the reason, you're there for their expertise, as I mentioned, and their experience. At the same time, one has to wonder, because the conversation doesn't take place on the client's fact pattern terrain. It takes place on kind of this stock speech, or at least it has.
Yeah.
And seeing high level attorneys myself, working with them, hiring them, firing them, having them represent me, I've seen these repeat because
Yeah.
it works. It's impressive.
Yeah. So now you're working with AI and law, and you're exploring a technology that I would imagine there's at least some percentage of the legal world who are very resistant to this technology, that don't want to implement it too much in their field. Are you getting pushback within your field for what you're doing?
Plenty.
Mm.
It is, again, my thesis is that law is data. Okay. So all of the code, statutes, cases, fact patterns, varieties of fact patterns, persons and companies, that forms one giant data set. So the current and prior model is that given the esoteric knowledge of the lawyer will control the representation. So the lawyer will say, I put up the barriers like we talked about. I've got magical words. I've got in recent years, we had a very nice corporate offices, a nice conference room, a view of the city, tasseled loafers, a $5,000 Italian briefcase, a watch. All of these were symbologies to show to the client, I'm different than you, okay, to justify the model, which is client pays retainer and client will pay. The fee for legal is a time-based metric, okay?
Yeah.
So the billable hour. The attorney will have their hourly rate. The client will sign a retainer agreement. Who decides how much time is spent? Is it the customer? No. It's the salesperson.
Yeah.
So you can see immediately in that model how greater sophistication, greater experience, financial motive to conduct the representation in the way that the lawyer wants it to be done. Okay.
Yeah.
Contrast that, Artie, with your chat GPTs, your Perplexity, your Gemini, you name it. DeepSeek, okay? The big DeepSeek. Go on to DeepSeek and you're a layperson and you can type in, oh gosh, I'm getting divorced. Chat GPT, oh no, I just crashed my car. And you're lit with a wave. We're talking billions of parameters, LLMs, as you well know.
Yeah.
Waves of information. So for the first time in history, a layperson, non-lawyer, can look into the law library, right?
Yeah.
And not walk into a law library and they wouldn't know which book to pick up. They can converse back and forth. So retail, freelance, do-it-yourself law is here already.
Yeah.
It's here. And so contrast those two. You have the fancy lawyer saying, give me money and I'll handle this and you be quiet and you don't need to know anything. I'll let you know if I need to know something, with, in many cases, free business, divorcing person, car accident person, up to CFO, COO, CEO level, getting educated on the law themselves.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, Artie, the change is here. It's adopt or die for members of the law business.
There's something I forgot to add to my simplification of the definition. And there's something else attorneys bring to the table, and that's their phone, their contacts. They have potentially, like if you're dealing with a criminal attorney, they probably have a relationship with the district attorney. If you're dealing with corporate law, they probably have relationships with other attorneys that you might have to be dealing with, potentially in conflict with. So the phone book that person has is also very valuable. That's something that the LLMs or small language models or anything, they won't be able to do, right? So
Correct.
how do you handle that aspect of it? Is it just, or I guess a better question is, what is the limit of what language models can do for the person wanting to do some of their own research or own investigating for legal stuff?
It's a self-limiter. So it's based already on for lack of a better term, the education and experience and intellectual capacity of the user.
Hmm.
Okay. So imagine on the top shelf would be, an Alan Dershowitz, for instance, right? Constitutional, fine legal mind. He can go on to GPT. He's going to structure his questions in a certain way.
Yeah.
And he's going to see the data sets in a certain way. So he brings his experience to it. So for experienced practitioners, you're going to get a lot of value and utility from the LLM. Okay. Go down to the other side of that spectrum and have the person who's, like I say, pro bono as for instance, which is, pro bono publico is a free client. They don't pay money. You represent them, and we're required as lawyers to give time. So go down to the other end of that. I'm being thrown out of my apartment, right? They're going to receive a lot of information, and that person, maybe they're never going to think to type in unlawful detainer. Or if they see unlawful detainer, Artie, they're going to say, I don't know what that is. Move on, go on to another prompt. So the large language model's utility is going to rise or fall with the level of sophistication of the user. And now you probably know as well as I, talking to some of the brightest minds with your show, Jill Stein and Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
The number of people up here is less, generally speaking, than the number of people down here. The LLM model, as you know, is token based. What is a token? That's how we price it. A token is not even a whole word unless the word is a and the.
Yeah.
A token is 3 or 4 letters. So you don't even get really a whole word. The more a person uses the LLM, the more the person will be charged for using the LLM. So if you step back and say, wait a minute, Alan Dershowitz knows what to ask and get a wide scope of what's going on. Joe Schmo, for lack of a better term, will spend more time and more money on it. So from a legal perspective, if we're accessing legal that way, it's a upturned market where those who need it the most with LLMs are going to pay the most.
Yeah.
So that's a factor, of which there are many.
Is there, I think this is a risk across the board in academia, but I'd imagine it's just as much of a risk in the legal sense as like basically cheating, for lack of better words, people who are getting the qualifications and getting in an industry that might not have the knowledge that they claim to, but have obviously the tools of AI and stuff like that to kind of help them get through that point and even help them in their careers. So is the public at a greater risk? Maybe not right now because language models are a little bit newer still, but over the next 10, 20 years, is it going to be harder and harder to find a qualified attorney? Obviously, we're going to know some qualified attorneys. So we're going to know of some. The more high-profile people, you're going to assume that they've been vetted a bit more. But if you open up just a general phone book, in 10 years, do you think it's going to be a greater risk for people to, like, well, I have no idea if this person is as qualified as their certification or their degree might lead one to believe?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, in 10 years, the number of lawyers will probably decline. So because the whatever you want to call it, self-service oriented ability to do law with AI is not only just thunderstrikingly amazing, but you probably know also we're at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
So I wrote on my Substack, Artie, there, you may know the Big Four accounting, right? PwC, KPMG. KPMG, a large accountancy, was awarded a law license in the state of Arizona. It happened a few weeks back. They'd been applying and they had to obviously go through committees because they're not a person, but the firm itself was able to obtain a law license in Arizona. And so I'll use that example in answer to your question. We have highbrow, like I say, high sophistication level people who can understand. They do a lot of law already, granted. Yeah. But you have accountants who are becoming and will become licensed lawyers. That will be the same with, for instance, a law professor. Right now, you're going to hire, if 5 years ago, you needed to hire the best and brightest attorney at $2,200 an hour. In 5 years, if you're friends with the right law professor, you can phone them up and get that top level answer for free or low cost. Yeah. And so what that market dynamic means is a whole structure is going to be built, or whole new structures, I would say, not one, many, 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 like I said, thousands. So I hope that answers. There's going to be a lot less lawyers. People will access law in different and new ways. Regarding the risk, people will absolutely fall off of cliffs, legally, metaphorically speaking, by making mistakes because of whatever you want to call it, Dunning-Kruger or confidence in the LLM. Yeah. You're going to see it there. You're going to do it. And then your life's going to get wrecked because you did the wrong thing. And so with that in mind, as a practitioner myself, I say, well, we're in this conversation, not for our own self-interest, not because the technology is doing this, whether we like it or not. We have a professional obligation to be in that, whatever you want to call it, conversational window. The public is accessing law on the LLMs. And so that's why I position myself as, we're going to do the AI. We're going to do the legal. If you have AI things, come to me, because they're going to do it whether we like it or not. So the lawyers should look out for the public, I think.
So with your company right now, are you guys actually creating your own LLMs, or how are you going about making your mark with
Project Gist is something I originated in 2022. It remains, until funding, a project. So if you think about it as a lab or an incubator, I'm picking up lawyers who want to be AI plus, which is what I call it, AI positive. I'm picking up my client base, other client bases of people in this brand new world, right? Friends of mine who are lawyers, colleagues. I have my clients and they don't know what to do with AI. The lawyers are saying, here's this AI. I don't know what to do with AI. Yeah. So it occurred to me in 22 to dive into it. 23 was the big breakout year, as you remember, for AI, where it really went public. And so I said, I've got to get some concrete parameters, there was an experimental phase. I'm not a code writer, Artie. So I had to learn a lot of that, still much yet to learn. But I learn as we do in the corporate world. I pair up with other people who are expert in code, and they have the code mind and I have the law mind. So Project Gist has evolved to solve those issues that I talked about earlier with AI in the law, which are old model practice had the lawyer saying, stay out of it, client. So that's one pressure point. Another pressure point is that the client does not receive an education from legal. The client pays hours. And I've seen it iteration with clients. They know no more about that area of the law when they're done paying $1.5 million for a litigation. They know no more than they knew at the beginning. All they know is to give the lawyer what the lawyer wants. So the information arbitrage between lawyer and client, the clients messing themselves up on LLMs, which are not privileged, I should point out. It's all legally discoverable, what you put in, the documents you put in, the outputs you get out. So Lawyers messing themselves up on LLMs. You've probably seen fake cases that lawyers will cite in their court filings. There are several lawyers who've been dinged, particularly in Florida. And it's because you go on an LLM and you ask for a case citation, and it might give you Ally McBeal. It might give you John Grisham, and you don't know it.
Yeah.
So Project Gist, we build bespoke law bots. It is SLM, not LLM. So if you think about an LLM as a giant universe, like an ocean with sharks, vast, you can't see all of it. You don't know what's in it. It's cloudy. We build parameters like a bespoke swimming pool. So think of a pristine swimming pool. So we're building, and we built many of them already, labeled by jurisdiction, labeled by topical area, labeled by contents. We'll tell you what goes in it. And importantly, instead of doing this automated law where clients will mess themselves up, we have the lawyers stay in the conversation. So here's your small language model in Peoria, in California, in Singapore, in Peru. And here's the lawyer whose mind space this is. So use the SLM, the bespoke law bot. If you encounter problems, help is standing by with the lawyer. So in this way, we're forming, I say I only need 10,000 lawyers and 10,000 developers. We're forming the legal community to be AI positive. And we're introducing that access, which is structured and safe for the client to use.
Awesome.
Long story short.
I'd love for you to dive into the SLM and LLM stuff a bit more, because I saw a post of yours. You had, of course, this is just a display, but you had a large stack of paper and a small stack of paper. LLM is the big stack, SLM is the small stack. I think a lot of people, when they think about a language model, they might worry with a small language model. Is it going to have the information needed to understand my problem fully? And I think people, probably myself included, would be more drawn to an LLM, saying, I'd rather have more than less. So could you maybe explain why less would be more in this case?
Sure. And I do call it, it's a borrowed term from Jan LeCun at Meta, who calls it less is more alignment. Okay, now he has a technical meaning for that. I just adopted it as the data in the tool. Less is more alignment. That's what we're building. So if you think about a previous problems that we talked about, this vast information, the unlawful detainer, the person doesn't know what that means. They don't know to ask unlawful detainer. They don't know if unlawful detainer pops up on Chat GPT, what it means. And so for them, as a hypothetical, would be eviction law bot for name the jurisdiction, Dallas, Texas, West Palm Beach, Florida, eviction law bot. So since the law is also localized, as you know, by 50 state and by county, a person who needs at a low cost to learn that area for their own purposes benefits, like going into Walmart with the products on the shelf, where you know that's spaghetti, that's cereal, that's milk. We label what's in it. We label what it is. We say how you're supposed to use it. And we have the lawyer standing by. Call Bob, call Sally if you need intervention. So I'll just wrap it up. The Alan Dershowitzes will not need. In fact, I would love to have the Dershowitz constitutional law bot for GIST, right? You can imagine taking his mind space. So it's a ambitious project. It is to categorize law, label it, put it on the shelf, and the customer can access it at a low price point.
Okay, so is the danger or the risk of a large language model, like if you have all the data for all the counties, all the states, and of course federal law in one chatbot, one language model, is the risk that it's going to start mixing things up and start giving you information that isn't actually pertinent to your county, but you might be led to believe it is?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
the example I use with our work is ask one of our bespoke law bots who built the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
People value, again, the tokenization of the price. You have to look at the pricing model of LLMs. Tokenization is the pricing model. So they want you to keep asking about Eiffel Tower, Tower of London, all this stuff. And they don't want you to ever not have an answer. Our bespoke law bots are different, and I'm quite proud of it, that you can stump ours. So you can ask something and it will, on occasion, say, I'm sorry, that's not in my data set. Which in the LLM world, oh, we've been stumped, we're horrible. In this use case, it's exactly the answer you want, because you don't want the Ally McBeal citation that you put in your brief. You don't want the John Grisham fact pattern.
Yeah. When it comes to law, I think people outside of that realm often kind of think that the law is black and white, which it is in some cases, but in many, there's a lot of gray area. And the way I see it is like, that's why you have two opposing attorneys and possibly more than that involved, is because there are different ways to interpret the same thing, the same code, whatever it might be. So when somebody's working with an SLM like yours to figure out what their options are, should they be argumentative? Should they? I think everyone should be with LLMs, with AI. Period. You should be basically looking it over, seeing if you agree with it, and challenging it. Is that something that you encourage, like challenging the SLM to make sure that it's accounting for your logic, I guess?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why having a small model where there's less data noise is the right thing. And I'm not saying LLMs are primarily this. No. We are not looking to educate our AI, our tools, with the public. We're looking to use the tool to form the mind of the user. And so the user must accord their own understanding with the information. And if they've got a giant universe of data, they're going to be kind of lost.
Yeah.
And so I think the utility is targeting by jurisdiction, subject area. I've called it a Napster of law. I've called it a Spotify of law, where you can actually look out and find, and have a search window also that's enabled. So you can discuss in layman's terms. If you don't know intellectual property as a category, hey, this is the problem I'm having. Okay, here are solutions.
Yeah. Is accessibility something that drives you, or was it more of just being on top of a technology?
Accessibility of the client, you mean, to legal information?
Yeah, I think AI gives accessibility to people where they didn't have it before. You have basically a high-level assistant that you can work out high-level problems with. You can do so much that people used to be closed off to people who didn't have the ability to hire somebody to do a lot of things, to pick their brain. Obviously, an attorney costs a lot of money per hour, so you can pick somebody's brain without having to absorb all the costs that it used to. Would you say accessibility is something that drives you, or what kind of was your underlying motivation when you got into this?
It was the big information arbitrage between lawyer and client. And again, universal. You're paying nothing. You're paying nothing pro bono. You should learn. You're paying $1.5 million for an engagement over years.
Yeah.
You should probably darn well be an expert after that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an opportunity, going back to the very beginning, to say, well, yeah, you're outsourcing your fate, right? Sometimes jail, life or death, all, your fortune to another person, which is fine. But what we need is that middle road. So you have your lawyer who you trust, who's expert, and they're in the AI conversation. You're not homebrewing at home and then bringing problems to your lawyer. The good news, Artie, is there is a paradigm for this already. The good news is coming up in the Bay Area myself saw the company called Medscape in the early 90s said, we're going to digitize medicine. And people lost their ever-loving minds, many, regulatory. And it emerged and WebMD took over. And then it became now customary. So you will, I will, we all will. I've got a splinter. How do I do a splinter?
Yeah.
I've got a cough. How do I do a cough? It's going to be the same with law. And so like medicine, we have to have safeguards that the professional understands, that the professional writes the AI. I say lawyers have to write legal AI, not code people. All due respect, but we both have to do it. So you need a competent attorney to translate their brainware into an expert QA code person who can QA it, make sure it works.
Yeah.
So these twin teams is what we're building, but it's helpful to see and observe the medical field in digital.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think I've been in tech for a while, and I think one of the big problems with a lot of companies is they have developers working on a problem without consulting the people who are actually going to be dealing with that problem in their everyday lives. So I think it's really important to, a lot of companies, a lot of software companies, they'll start addressing a problem with developers without the input of the professionals, the people who are going to be dealing with that technology, who are actually in the mix. Like you'll have a lawn care company, a software company for lawn care, and you have developers that have never worked in that industry, coding for that lawn care industry without really consulting those people. And then it's like, well, it doesn't work for our needs because you never consulted us on our needs. So
right.
I think it's a really good thing.
It's human nature, it's psychology. It is, what are we doing here, right? So we think about AI and we say there's a lot of emphasis on, like I say, building the machines.
Yeah.
But AI is a human tool.
Yeah.
AI is an extension of the human mind. And so I think part of our markets get a little lost in, like I say, building the robot.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, whatever it is, lawn care, you name it, it is about using the tool to better form the thoughtware, I call it, thoughtware, not software, thoughtware of the user. Yeah. And if you look at it in that aspect, then it becomes a marvelous, that's why I'm so fired up. It's the Alexandria Museum. It is your law library all in one. It just so happens in law, we need to have the lock and key of the nomenclature. And adding the experience. You and your lawyer with AI are supercharged.
Yeah.
You alone with AI in law are maybe endangered. Maybe. Yeah. And you might not know.
Yeah. I love that hybrid aspect of it because it's like, yes, you need to consult a professional that has a way more well-versed comprehension of everything. But I think everyone who isn't an attorney or a doctor or, these high-level professions that take a lot of schooling, you go to a doctor, you go to an attorney, you have some questions, but then you're on your way home and you're like, I didn't ask all these questions because a lot of people are nervous dealing with a professional who's way more knowledgeable than them. So it's, when you're home, you can ask these questions. You can just have a conversation without worrying about how much am I being charged for sitting here for an hour asking these questions. So really love that hybrid model. I think it's...
And that's why I say it's iterative. Yeah. It is intended, in answer to your earlier question, do you want people to push and test? Yeah, to the extent you push and test is the extent that you're going to gain your understanding. It's another way I've described our tools already is like a nano law school, right? So you'd have a law school class and it would take place over a semester for law students. Here you have a layperson, doesn't have the nomenclature. We add plain language. So strip the nomenclature, plain language understanding, and the person can iterate, like you say, 2 a.m. That's the intention. Yeah. And to be honest, that's one of the galling clients are most pissed off on Mondays, Artie. Clients are most pissed off on Mondays, Artie, and I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. Because often news breaks at 5 o'clock on Friday, and
Yeah.
they are told to call on Monday at 9. And today, they are going to their lawyer's website and they're using what I call a simple chat bot, right? Which is to be distinguished from what we're building. Ours are content tools, a chat bot on a dental office or a lawn care or a law firm. The law firm is the most galling. You have something break at 5 p.m. on Friday and you don't have a relationship personal with your lawyer. You're going to go to the law firm website. You're going to call their phone. They're closed. You're going to go, there's a chatbot. You're going to go on their chatbot and you're going to basically be not informed of the law because there's a risk there. But you're going to get through the chatbot and say, maybe I can get some help here. Geez, I need to make some decisions over the weekend. I've got to move money or I've got to do this. And ultimately, all those chatbots bottom line to call us Monday at 9. Send an email here. Wouldn't it be a whole new universe if you, the panicked person at 8 p.m. on Friday, because you crashed your car, or because you got an audit notice, or because your real estate deal has fallen apart, or because you got a letter from the SEC regarding your latest round, you could look at your jurisdiction and that area and say, shoot, yeah, I'm going to spend several hours getting up to speed. Yeah. So it empowers the person with law, it delivers law in a whole new way that's not being done right now.
Yeah. It seems like the risk is the same with AI in general. The way I see it, I think AI can make you dumber or smarter depending on how you use it. Now, it seems like this is the same thing. If you treat it as something that is just going to, I need this answer and I just want to copy and paste that answer to something else where it's supposedly needed, probably not going to get what you need out of it. But if you're using it and engaging with it, actually trying to understand the information that's being given you and even challenging it when you see it necessary, I think that's where you gain the most from it. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think so. And also the volume of data that's available. So the more you go, the more information you can get. That points in the direction of a large language model. So thinking of medicine as well, medicine began with the internet, digital medicine, right? WebMD, with the old-fashioned internet, Web 1.0 or 2.0.
Yeah.
AI is a whole different ballgame. So we're going to see people. I tend to be sometimes a hypochondriac, if you're familiar with that term. Yeah. So you get a symptom and 10 years ago, you look on WebMD. Oh, no, I've got this, I've got that.
Yeah.
AI said, no, we need to get more specific. Keep going. And it will be the same with law. You can get granular detail, which is what attracts me to it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that example because, the WebMD stuff, it's like, I have this symptom. It's like nothing in it is in isolation. So you're giving it a symptom, and that symptom, like a headache, could be a symptom of just you were around loud music for the last hour, or it could be a symptom of brain cancer. I mean, you never know what one little symptom is, but yeah, you can get more context. You can give more information. I've used LLMs for medical stuff too. It's like you just feed it a bunch of information and you get a way better, you always get the, consult a medical doctor if you need more answers, but you can get some information. Is this serious? Is this something that I really need to be worried about? Especially like you said, 2 a.m. when you have thoughts racing through your head, you're feeling, you can't really call a doctor or anything like that. So I really love it. It's really cool. Your background, if I'm not mistaken, you have some background in constitutional law. Is that right?
Yes. So I'm no expert, haven't worked for some giant whatever, but over the years, so going back to even undergraduate, I'll start there. Political science, University of San Francisco. I just tended to be a individual liberties kind of a person. People have types. And so in college, went to Young Republicans and Federalist Society, and a lot of study of the Constitution. Did a lot of reading. Someone gave me a book called Beyond the Constitution, which I highly recommend. The author's called Hadley Arkes, Arkes, Beyond the Constitution. Professor Arkes is still with us, and I got to meet him, which was like fanboy of a constitutional law professor a few years back. Beyond the Constitution is a book that talks about that just really spoke to my understanding of what is America, what is our system, what are our rights, do our rights come from the government? So all these fundamental questions on which our country is based. I kind of was steeped in that. I knew undergrad I would probably go to law school. And so in law school, I dove into that area. It happened timing wise, Artie. I was in constitutional law in 2000, fall 2000 into spring 2001. And those who are older like me, you're a young guy, will remember that was the Bush v. Gore case.
Yeah.
So we had everyday study on constitutional law. Who's right? Gore's right, Bush right. So graduate, get into regular practice, doing estate planning first, and then the finance stuff that I mentioned. And someone came to me who was arrested. A person came to me who was arrested and said, "Would you help me?" And I said, "Okay, what's going on here?" He had been a free speech practitioner. There are people for whom carrying their message to the public is very important. His happened to be the thing that he cared about. He would be on the public streets talking about his important issue. He was a retired guy. He had put together a truck with signs which depicted this issue that he cared about. And he would drive around town with this truck with these signs on it, okay? He was a retired guy, as I mentioned, sophisticated, spent maybe 10 years doing this, and then at one point got arrested at his church. And the flashpoint of the church was this truck with the signs on it, okay? So he had been told before, do not come back here, because there's a church, there's a school adjacent to the church. The school and the parents did not appreciate this guy's display, to put it mildly. And so they were fomenting against the church. The pastor said, "You can't come back anymore." My guy came back after being sent a letter of no trespass without his truck, in a regular car. So he got that part. Regular car, goes to services at the church. After the police are waiting, the pastor places him under citizen's arrest. The police hook him up, take him away, and he's charged with 2 counts of criminal trespass. So I don't know how deep. This is like my conversion story on con law. Okay, so it's important. He said, "I'm going to go to jail, this and that." The prosecutor said, "You're going to do jail time." And he wanted me to help him because I knew him, not well, but he knew me. And so I took on the case. And for me, I said, wait a minute, here's a guy in public. He was very diligent at speaking only in public, did not go on private property, including with his signs, parked in public, and was able to get his 2 counts dismissed. I said, okay, this is good. And then my next step was, well, this is his church, right? He's like persona non grata in his and he said to me, "Can I go back to the church?" I said, "Are they going to arrest me again?" And my advice was, maybe don't. Maybe go somewhere else. "Oh, I've been going to this church for 40 years. Okay. So then we have what I would consider a restorative justice meeting with the pastor and the business manager and the school. And they were like, buzz off, don't come back. Any event, we negotiated a truce. This guy went back to his church. That was the case that got me thinking about all this stuff. And even right now, flash forward to 2025. This guy had his political thing that he cared about. It wasn't mine. I wasn't interested in it. It was some of it's pretty ugly, but not illegal. And he was a guy who was diligent at being in public. And I watched the mob gather. They're, literally almost pitchforks and, this guy's evil and stuff in the newspaper. And he's hurting people. I said, wait a minute. I know this guy. He was eccentric. He's got his thing. I don't agree with it. But he's not harming anyone. People are allowed to speak in public. So I'm too long-winded. I'm sorry, probably running up all the time.
You're good.
After that, I just handled several others. One was a pastor who likewise was arrested on a public sidewalk. His case ended up being a federal case in the Northern District of California. He ended up doing jail time. He ended up then winning on appeal at the Ninth Circuit. Another one was two old ladies, and I say that affectionately to my former clients, who had their political issue or moral issue, if you will, that they cared about, arrested in 2011 on a public sidewalk. Retired ladies arrested public sidewalk. So flash forward to today, you can probably guess already that these issues are fresh in my mind. I have a sweet spot for anyone who gets in trouble for speaking in a public place. And I don't care what you're saying. If it's lawful, right? No breaches of the peace, no inducing violence. If you're speaking what you want to speak in public, I'll help you if you get in trouble. So that's kind of been like my Batman, throw on the Batman suit, don't get paid, help out. But I think lawyers have to do that to keep our country free.
What's something that you feel is largely misunderstood about the Constitution among the general public?
The main thing is fundamental. It's something called positivism. Right? Are you familiar with positivism?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay, so you are I know you to be a very experienced and educated guy. So you're at the top of the intellectual pyramid of society. And I say, what's positivism? If I tell people positivism, be positive. No. Positivism is the notion in law that the law is the law because the government says it's the law. Okay? It goes back to, think of old England before the American Revolution or France. Okay? The government says it, so that is the law. So the biggest thing I think people misunderstand about the most marvelous nation in history, America, with the shortest ever constitution and the longest enduring for a couple hundred years constitution, is that the law is not the law because the state says so. The law is the law because it accords with natural human justice. So one example would be, and I don't want to get too hot. I don't know where to go with this. Okay, so let me tell you about a bill of attainder. Have you ever heard that phrase, bill of attainder? Maybe? Vaguely in the background. A bill is like a notice to the public. Okay? Attainder is like tainted. You are tainted, okay? In merry old England, the king would decide, I don't like that guy. I'm going to fill out a bill. I'm the king. Here's a bill of attainting or attainder. He'd hand it to law enforcement. So the king wants us to get Joe Schmo. So then they would turn on the mechanism of justice to go get Joe Schmo. Fast forward to where we are now. I don't want to get political, but so bill of attainder is enumerated in the Constitution. It's illegal.
Yeah.
Bills of attainder are unlawful. We do not name a person and find the crime. If there's a crime, then we find out who did it. Without saying any more, and then I'll shut up, it's possible that in the last couple of years, there might have been a very famous person that some people decided was bad, And the mechanisms of, quote, justice were turned on to get that person.
Yeah.
So people misunderstand the law is not the law is the law. We must obey the law. I'm a lawyer. I advocate everyone obeying the law, but people mistake the understanding of it. The police cannot pull you over because they want to. There's another granular example.
Yeah.
They have to have a reason, a legal reason.
So positivism is something that our Constitution is not. We don't rest on the concept of positivism, right?
Right. So the law is not the law because we say it is.
Yeah.
The law is the law because it accords with fundamental human liberties. And if you look at our Constitution, it does not bind the person, the individual, you and me. It binds the government. It says what the government may and may not do. And the assumption is everything else the individual is free to do.
Yeah.
So you are a free person with rights that come by being alive, and the government is instituted to protect those rights.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing, and I don't want to get into a rabble about COVID. We saw an inversion of all these things on hyperdrive.
Yeah.
It bothered me deeply, Artie, as a lawyer. Just the mask thing. Just the mask thing. And I understand public health. We want to keep each other safe. But the state told you what to wear on your face.
Mm-hmm.
We have custody of your face.
Yeah.
And so if we think about that, that's quite something.
Yeah. I'm happy to talk about that because COVID, I know people who were, I believe, in the wrong during COVID want to move past it. But the reality is it was such a significant point of recent American history that it's something that requires so much more analysis and reflection to figure out how we can prevent a lot of that from happening again. And to go back just a little bit, the positivism, it sounds like whenever I would hear somebody say something along the lines of the Constitution gives the government this power, I'd always get a little irritated because I'm like, well, it's a power restricting document. That's what the Constitution is. It's restricting the government's power, not giving them power. And I would say that it isn't resting on positivism that would be in line with that, right?
Correct.
With COVID, I saw a post of yours and it said, COVID reversed private and public. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Because I didn't understand that completely, and I think I understand what you're meaning, but I would love to have you elaborate on that.
Sure. So beginning with what I just mentioned, your face. Your body belongs to yourself. Yeah. Or some people have religious notions, various religious notions about who or whom or what your body, your physical body belongs to. It's the most core of the rights. The power of control over your own body, okay, goes back to the Magna Carta, which I'm sure you're familiar with. The Magna Carta, the pre-constitutional British statement of individual liberties, had something called habeas corpus, which is still in the law, but originated there in the 13th, 14th century. And that was the notion that the person has control and custody over their own body. Okay, habeas corpus means who has the body? Give us the body. So a person may have been taken away by authorities, and you would file a habeas corpus petition, still to this day. Who has the body? That's Latin. Who has the body? Come to court make a showing of who has the body, where is the body, and we're acting on this person's behalf. So COVID, in my view, on a meta level, and there are various actors, good and bad, federal, state, local, and there are various heroes, federal, state, and local, and there are various people trying to care for their fellow citizen, health-wise, federal, state, and local. But the net was that public was made private, private was made public. My face is my own private business. You don't have the right to tell me to put a mask on it. Would be an example of inverting private to the public interest. So let's talk about public to the private interest. This would be a public park, which is owned by the people. Think of my guy with the truck. You're in public, the public sidewalk or the park, I'm saying. Public park, hiking trail. Who does that belong to? That belongs to the people. And yet in Tahoe, where I was, I saw signs on mountain trails, outdoors, right? Fresh air, not indoors, outdoors. Closed. That's not private property. You can close private property. You can't close public property. Or the guy on the beach, Artie, you see the paddleboarder guy?
Yep.
The infamous guy is in the, what do we call it? The ocean. Who owns the ocean? You can get into a discussion about, is he at risk? Is he making people at risk? Or if he goes out, everybody's going to go out. So we got to get him so other people don't go out. He's in the ocean.
Yeah.
The ocean is not private property that empowers officials to go grab people out of it, like a store or a bar, right? Or your podcast. You don't like what I'm saying? You're going to dump my video. Yeah. Cyrus is full of it. You're out of here. So COVID inverted those things. Okay. And now there's a reckoning, not negative, not blah, 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 revenge. Things need to be reset, I believe.
Yeah.
To empower the individual.
Yeah. I agree. And I think it's why I don't believe that even with a pardon, Dr. Anthony Fauci should be let off the hook. I think I think it's objectively true he broke some laws. He was trying to avoid the Freedom of Information Act requirements, and he tried to cover up the funding of the Wuhan lab and all that stuff. And that's just one thing. There was so much that happened. Like you said, you can debate whether the person on the water on a wakeboard by himself is a risk to anybody. I think it's pretty clear that that person is not a risk for transmitting any disease like that. Especially like the simple physics of it, like when people were trying to force each other to wear masks outside. It's like, you guys know how like air dissipates everything. Like it's really hard to transfer anything beyond like if you're in maybe kissing range outside. But it also begs the question, why was science used to justify infringing on people's rights when the science evolves? Science is a constant struggle to figure out what's true, but it's not some like monolithic entity saying this is what science says. This is, like that's just not how science operates. But it was used as justification for all of these infringements. How did that happen? Like why is it that I love science. I think it's an amazing tool, and that's what it is. It's a tool. It's not some, like I said, monolithic entity giving dictates. How was it that science was used to override rights?
Well, I'll agree with you that it's unscientific to say trust the science.
Yeah.
Science, as I understand it, is the process of inquiry to understanding better natural and other phenomenon. So from the get-go, trust the science is a fallacy. It's a sophistry. So, but it requires, again, you saw it, I saw it. Others will see that, again, positivism. There's a sign. It says wear mask. it says it on the sign. The sign must be official. I must wear the mask, which is why a deeper education in the law, the Constitution, individual civil liberties is required to make people free, because they could look at that and say, baloney, the guy's in the ocean, no risk. Or I'll give another example. I've got a bunch of kids, and my wife and I go to church on Sundays. And then in COVID, they closed everything, as you well know, as we all know. And so as the father, I think I believe it's my responsibility to kind of lead my family in our religious life, our prayer life, and it's closed. And so I said, what do we do? In our faith, we go every Sunday. That's part of my faith tradition. And so my wife said to me, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to go there, but it's closed. We're going to go there. We're going to go there and be close, and we're going to bring some prayers, and we're going to pray. And we're going to go as close to the door as possible, because in my faith tradition, Catholicism, there's an aspect of physical presence that's required. We believe that God is physically, not just spiritually, physically present in that place. So I said, we're going to go and get as close as we can, stand outside the doors, which are closed, do our readings, and be close to our God.
Yeah.
So we truck it up. We go over there. There's a, I don't know why, but there's a security, like a car, private security car, if you've seen those, not police, just like parked in the corner. And then we drive in, and I noticed like new things. There's like new cameras up. I don't know if something happened or what. And then there are big no trespassing signs, health order, COVID. So I've got a variety of children's ages. Come on, guys. And the teens are going, Dad, the security car there. Dad, the security car is going to get us. Or look at that, Dad. Come on, Dad's so stubborn. Look at that sign. We're going, guys. We go for it. So we go outside the door of the church. There are signs, giant signs on the doors. No trespassing. And my 14-year-old at the time says, Dad, read the sign. No trespassing. I said, what's trespassing? That's going somewhere that you don't have a right to be. Do we have a right to be here? Who does this belong to? Churches are private property. They can be public facilities, legally speaking, but they belong privately to the members, right? To the people of that faith tradition. So I explained to my children, we have every right to be here. But Dad, the health department says we can't be here. Okay. Our legal right to be here is higher than what the health department says. And so in my long-winded way, the more people understand their liberties and the law, which, by the way, our AI tools help with at Project Gist, the more free they will be. Because otherwise, my children don't get that example. We're not near the church. We're not near our God, for instance, which is a very granular right. Does that help?
Yeah,
Sorry for
it
being
definitely
so
helps.
long-winded.
No, you're good. I have some firsthand experience with some of the overreach that happened during COVID, the extension through corporations to force people to take a vaccine that wasn't really vetted scientifically. I was working for Cox Automotive, and they came out with their mandate for the vaccine, and no one's going to tell me that I have to take some medical procedure. So my answer was no, and I was I was a little aggressive with it. But I think a lot of people, and I didn't understand this fully, but first of all, the reason everyone gives for why all of this overreach is so necessary, it's always safety, 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 safety. And which I want people to be safe, but I don't think safety is the most important thing. I think freedom is far more important than safety. And I got this mandate from my employer at the time, and I basically told him to piss off. And I'm not an attorney, but I was trying to help other people, especially single mothers at that company, because single mothers just felt like their backs were against the wall. And, people, it was a little frustrating that religious exemptions were one of the only ways for people to get out of it. Because not everyone is religious, and not everyone understands that a moral position is the equivalent of a religious position in that context. But yeah, it was just crazy to watch the overreach happen, all under safety. It's all about safety, safety, safety. Uh, what can people do to prevent or to arm themselves with the knowledge necessary to prevent that kind of overreach, to know their rights, to know what they can do in that situation in the future?
The book Beyond the Constitution is pretty high level. That's like an intellectual book, but people should study the Constitution. We haven't yet made a law bot for it. That's a great idea. I've done grok summaries. I did you've heard of Google, you've heard of Notebook LM, right? Google's program. I put the Constitution into that and said, give me one of the talk shows. They do the synthetic talk shows. So I made probably the first synthetic AI talk show on the Constitution is on my Substack. That's a great way, the AI. So go to my Substack, look up the Constitutional Synthetic Podcast, and it's two people voices talking about what the Constitution is all about.
Yeah, that's cool.
As in life, we get out of it, what we put into it. So the extent of your freedom is going to be the extent of your effort to secure your freedom, and you secure your freedom with knowledge. So high-level books, online research, get a corny copy of the Constitution, those little tiny constitutions. Understand, as I mentioned, it's not the law because it's written on a sign. It's the law because it's just. I mean, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quoting St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is no law at all.
Yeah.
An unjust law is no law at all. So when you talk about the vaccine, that's a great, I think maybe providential, this debrief I'm talking about we're having post-COVID. People talking about their human experience, people talking about what they went through. You can express it without the legalese.
Yeah.
You can say, does the state have the legal right to mandate a medical procedure on me? I call it a medical procedure. They can call it a vaccine to protect public health, which is their marketing. I can say also truthfully, it is a medical procedure. Medical procedures should be elective, voluntary, in other words, to the person whose body he or she is going to impact.
Yeah. So
that's constitutional education, Artie. You talking about your employer and how it went down. We're born free. And some of us thought that's really corny, and some of it did get really corny with the flags and stuff. But we're seeing right now, here we are, the 6th of February, the Second American Revolution is going on. I don't want to overstate it. Should probably schedule a follow-up. But the structure of our government is being restructured before our eyes for the first time since the founding.
Yeah. I do want to get into the Second American Revolution that you're speaking of. But first, I want one more thing about COVID. Mm-hmm. The rhetoric, this isn't from attorneys or anything, but the general public rhetoric that I was seeing at the time around my peers and stuff like that were more pro-mandate, pro-mask, all that kind of stuff. And just to be clear, I was the guy who was warning everyone about a pandemic that was about to hit. I was warning everyone in December of 2019, or maybe even November. But I was telling my friends, I was like, there's going to be a pandemic. I thought it was going to be way worse because I knew we couldn't trust China's numbers. I was like, We don't know if it's going to be 5% lethality, whatever, but this is going to be big. I was wiping my groceries down with sanitizing wipes, all kinds of stuff. I was wearing masks at first. And then I was paying attention to the data coming out, and I'm like, oh, this is more like the flu than anything else. Like, this isn't that big of a deal. I started to return to my, more libertarian ways. But the rhetoric that I would hear is, you don't have a right to put me in danger, to risk my life. And I always thought that was kind of a funny argument, because we do have the right to put each other's lives at risk, and we do it basically every day. Every time you go on the road, every time you drive, you're basically getting into an agreement with other people. Like, we're supposed to be responsible, obey the laws, but there's still a risk that we might hit each other unintentionally, and one of us might die, both of us might die. That's a risk of driving, So we're constantly putting each other at risk. And I'd love for you to discuss that a little bit. Like, do we have a right to put each other at risk?
You said it better than I could. And it's another exhibit Z of the thesis that whatever happened, it was private being inverted with public. So they said public health justifies the suspension of your private rights.
Yeah.
They told us in California, and I'm not sure where are you located, Artie? Where
Utah.
are you? Utah?
Yeah.
Okay, they told us in California, which was the first to lock down, woohoo, on St. Patrick's Day. They told us various things like you cannot have guests over for Thanksgiving. And you cannot have, we don't recommend you have guests over for Christmas. In the home. In your home.
Yeah.
Okay, so the public, because we don't want you to endanger others. Well, who is responsible for me and my guests in my home? I am responsible for me and my guests in my home and my body.
Yeah.
I actually protested in Truckee, California. Here's a revelation. I wrote this on X. Maybe you saw it. In late October or November of 2020, California, in an escalating series of what I believe to be illegal mandates that did not comport with the law, the governor had declared that there was a curfew. Maybe you heard this, maybe you didn't.
I don't think so.
Places in Europe decided that there were curfews to control spread. So California said, beginning this Saturday, you must not go out after 10 p.m. except for essential purposes. Okay. And it was intimated that you better have a letter from your employer, like I'm delivering for Uber or whatever it is. I'm official. I have a document that says I'm official. Only official purposes, otherwise stay home. How does the irascible Cyrus Johnson react to that? Went out to the garage and got a couple of my children and said, you get the spray paint, you get the stencils, let's go to work, put out the hobby horse. And I made a sign with spray paint about 2 feet tall and 3 feet wide that said, defy curfew, in red, white, and blue, stenciled. And get the tape, get the glue to stick on it. When's the curfew? 10 o'clock Saturday. Okay. At 9:59 on Saturday, I'm going to go stand in the center of town in front of the Bar of America. Many people know that, in Lake Tahoe. And I'm just going to stand there and peacefully protest in public with my sign. And I did. It was cold. It's getting into winter time.
Yeah.
But I'm there with this giant sign. Here's this crazy guy on the sidewalk, on the corner. Okay, everything's shuttered. This is a tourist area. This is ski country. Okay, Bar of America is like a lively, center of town. And there's this jerk, idiot, moron, weirdo, defy curfew. What was the reaction? Half of the cars drove by and went beep, beep, yeah. Half of the cars drove by and went beep, beep, fuck you.
Yeah.
The fingers, right? It was like 50-50 split. I said I would stand there for 30 minutes, told my wife, if anything happens to me, I'll call you, blah, blah, blah. Police car pulled up, didn't roll down the window, just looking at me, then pulled away, came back a second time, pulled away, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to do this for 5 more weeks. So I did. Nothing happened. I'm way off the tangent of your question, which was how do people misunderstand trust the science? But I will give you an answer, which is that each of us are free and independent actors. We create the world. We're not subject to the world.
Yeah.
So who saw this crazy guy on the sidewalk with a sign saying defy curfew? What does that mean? He's nuts, or maybe he's not nuts. So we got to question and probe and ask and think.
Yeah. I think COVID, more than any other time in recent history or any time in my lifetime, taught me how necessary it is for the people who are willing to defy, the people who are willing to speak out and say, no, this is not just. It's that much more important for those people to actually do it, even if half of the people are going to drive by saying F you. Because if no one does it, the majority of people are just going to be doing what they're told. They're not going to question the authority. And you need people who are saying, no, this isn't right, to kind of trailblaze and say, stand up for everyone, including, it's ironic, but by doing that, you're standing up for the people who are saying F you as well. So it's funny to me that the people are so mad, not realizing they're actually gaining the benefit of what you're doing as well.
Well, let me be craven for a moment and say craven and fanboy and say, God bless Elon Musk. God bless Elon Musk. And whatever people may think, good, bad, or indifferent, he's good, he's bad, his motives or whatever, he is the protagonist in the events today. He said, I'm going to do this, and he's doing it. It's an example of humanity writ large. He has the resources that we do not have. So bless him for that. But it is an inspirational example that it really is only one. Margaret Mead, I think, said it. Only one person, all it takes is this one person and a small dedicated group to change the world. It's the only thing that ever has. That's Margaret Mead, the feminist.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're a protagonist, Artie, to the extent you want to be. I'm a protagonist to the extent I want to be. And anybody, anywhere can literally change the world.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
So that's why a crazy lawyer guy who doesn't write code says, I think I can express the law into code and make a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Not an app, not a tool. People say, what are you doing? I'm rewriting law in a new way.
Yeah. Second American Revolution. We have a president in the White House who is, I believe, the first president to ever be a convicted felon, which the people who dislike him love to throw that around. And I don't know if I've talked about the 34 felony counts too much, but I think they're BS. I think what they did is they lifted 34, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure you understand this way better than me. 34 charges of falsifying business records, which is a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitations had already passed, so that it was no longer something that they could actually charge Trump with. But the way they lifted it up to a felony, or 34 felonies, is by tying it to a federal crime supposedly being covered up, even though that federal crime was never charged. So have you ever seen that before? You're covering up a crime, but the crime was never charged. So like, it still baffles me that that case ever happened. That was the ruling, that somebody is charged with a felony for covering up a crime that they weren't charged with. Is that? Have you ever seen anything like
I'll
that
give you my
before?
micro and then my
Yeah,
macro. The
yeah,
micro is, and I'm going to be bellicose here for a moment, and I'm going to adopt the language of the president, which is shocking. A lot of his communication style is intended to grab your attention.
yeah.
That particular micro case happened because of a rat. A rat. A lawyer named Michael Cohen. If we lawyers do anything, and they taught us this, by the way, Artie, week 1 of law school. And they warned us, even though this was 1999, before safe spaces, before all this stuff, you're going to hear some shocking things at this next hour's orientation. If you're sensitive, if you have a crime history, victim of crime, you may not wish to attend. Almost they had a disclaimer for us brand new first-year law students. So we go in, and it was described to us, this fact pattern, which was a real case. Criminal defense attorney of a guy who was I think later proved to be a murderer, had killed a woman. He killed the woman, and he buried the woman's body somewhere in the forest. Okay. They had a police, if I remember right, they had like a police detective. There's some forensics. It was kind of like, it was pretty thick. Like,
Yeah.
what's the show? NCI or whatever. So they're describing horrible stuff because as lawyers, maybe we'll go into criminal defense, but we should know. But the reason they described it horribly was for this reason. The murderer killed a woman. The murderer buried a woman. The murderer got arrested. The murderer went to his lawyer. The police, on behalf of the community, rightly, and on behalf of this poor woman's, young lady's family, where is she, the body? Tell us. It became clear that the lawyer knew, or the police suspected that the lawyer knew. His client had told him, I buried her wherever. And the family says, we must have peace. And they put the full force of the law at not just the criminal, the arrested man, the suspect, I'll put it that way, the suspect, but his lawyer. He's a murderer. He won't tell us. You will tell us. So they took us all on this journey, which I've tried to replicate here, Artie, for you and the benefit of the viewers. And any loving, compassionate person is going to conclude probably you did in your heart, as I do. Damn it, for crying out loud, it's the most shocking thing. Mr. Lawyer, tell the police they want their daughter's body. They want to bury the daughter. They said, students. The lawyer refused and went to jail. Was he right or was he wrong? He was right. The attorney-client privilege is to be held inviolate. Yeah. It is what undergirds the whole situation. Like medicine, you have medical privacy so that you can tell your doctor about the embarrassing things that you don't want people to know. And if you know your doctor's going to tell people the embarrassing health, private, personal things, you're not going to tell them, are you? It's the same with a lawyer. I'm being pejorative. I'm borrowing Trump's word. Michael Cohen, the lawyer of New York, violated his client's attorney-client rights to privilege by telling authorities, and he had his own problems. That was the origin of that case. You're quite correct. I agree with your legal judgment that they had been barred by the statute of limitations. They did charge misdemeanors, which they alleged to be tied to felonies, which were election crimes. It was a stale case. And finally, it was a wrong case because, Artie, every single settlement of every single legal case, with some exceptions, but on the main, settlements are confidential. Settlements are not disclosed. And so I don't care if it's a, what do they call her? Porn star, which I hate that word.
Yeah.
A person who did that and a settlement, it was a legal settlement. It was supposed to have been kept confidential.
Yeah.
So the lawyer violated his obligation and it led to legal peril for a man.
Yeah.
That's the micro. Believe it or not, that's actually the micro. And I have a macro on top of it if you want to hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
Go to February 2021 in your mind space. And we're almost a year into COVID. And we have a State of the Union address by a president who's beginning to be at war with his opposition. And at the end of that speech, you remember the news, international news, over his shoulder, the leader of the legislature, an official, in an official proceeding, acting officially, took his speech. Remember that? Speaker Pelosi?
Yeah, I think did you say 2021 though? This would have had to been like 2019 or something, right? Because
it would have been 20 then. So I'm wrong. No, you're correct. I'm wrong. Right before the birth of COVID or the descent of COVID.
Yeah, I remember that.
You're absolutely right. He's certainly out of office in 21. My bad. Typo. February 20.
Yeah.
She's the leader of the legislative branch of government. What was that?
Yeah, it was.
Was that a crazy person, a mean person, an old lady? Let's all laugh at it. She's being catty, this, that, and the other. There's other video that I've seen, which probably few have seen. She took the pieces and she was walking around the gallery showing people, this is what I think of him. This is what I think of him.
Yeah.
34 counts in New York, counts in Florida, counts in Georgia, impeachment. Was all of this an unlawful bill of attainder? Was this the legislature saying, here is the man? Was this the power of legislature saying, here is the man, find the crime? I'm risking alienating everyone on my left, but I'm just giving you my own opinion. And I work with and have friends with and love everyone because humanity's up here, politics is down here. But in that case, what was that? Did we find a man and then try to match crimes with him?
It very much seems like it to me. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, I don't think Trump is some scot-free person who's never done anything wrong. I think he has some things in his past that, he has some associations that I'm not a big fan of. He was mentored by Ray Cohn, and I don't think Ray Cohn was a good person. And I know Trump has probably done some shady things. My problem is he was elected to be the president of the free world. And if you are going to go after, I'm not against a president or former president being charged with a crime, but it has to be a significant crime and it has to be proven like without a doubt. There has to be irrefutable proof to go after a president like that. Not misdemeanor charges being lifted to felonies and all these little things that they're trying to go after him with. It's like, it starts to feel like just lawfare instead of anything else.
I'm going to tamper with your thinking for a second.
Yeah.
Because I heard you say something we heard by the thousands.
Yeah.
And that is, you said, former president.
Yeah.
Okay. You're younger than me, but maybe a peer in me. If you go not too far in age, I hope. Okay. Fix my hair.
Yeah.
If you go back in your memory space, we never had except for probably Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
The former, it's a pejorative, okay?
Yeah.
President Clinton, President George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, former President Trump. Why? Language matters.
Yeah.
Why? Former.
Yeah.
His case relied upon the fact that he did not have the right to have those documents, one of the cases in Florida.
Yeah.
He's a former. He can't have the documents. It was I think, a legal tactic. It was a pejorative because the fact of the law is that, there's a whole Presidential Library Act.
Yeah.
The ex-president out of office occupies a unique legal status that that few in history ever will, and that you and I do not share.
Yeah.
We don't have Secret Service. We don't get documents to sift through to decide what we want in our library. We don't get pension. We don't get office. We don't get staff. So the lie was put to some of that by that public messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Former president. And I even have contended with lawyers, fellow lawyers. He's the former president. I say he retains the title, and he retains many, many prerogatives. And that case in particular rested upon treating him like he was you or I. And that's that's contrary science.
Yeah. I'm happy you corrected me on that, because I actually recognize that same thing you're saying. I just find myself sometimes using that because it's, we hear it all the time. I can't remember what I was watching or reading, but I remember the term ex-president being used a lot in recent months. And it's like, I recognize that as a pejorative. I recognize the former president as a pejorative too, but like I said, it's been used so much. But when I heard ex-president, I'm like, that is definitely a pejorative. That I've never heard.
So the words have legal, right from the beginning of our discussion, the nomenclature. If he's a former, no documents.
Yeah.
If he's a president, documents. Sure, he's building his library under the Presidential Library Act. So we have to be very careful at how our language, through COVID, through this politics, and through our law, we have to be careful how we use and understand the language.
Yeah.
AI is a great aid there.
Yeah. Why do you call this the Second American Revolution? I have my assumptions about that. I like to be healthy. I want to see RFK in as HHS secretary. I think the bureaucracy has become too big, and obviously the FDA has not done what they're tasked to do. They haven't protected the American public from, red dyes and things that cause, major health concerns for people, major health problems. But that's just one little aspect. It's broader than that. So I would love to hear your assessment of why this is the Second American Revolution. And I'd also like to hear your assessment is some of the cries from the left are like, Trump's a threat to the Constitution. This is the end of democracy, things like that. Are any of those cries warranted at all?
Being critical of your government is always warranted. Left, right, center.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the government is a function of our delegated power. So I join with my left, right, and center brothers and say, who minds the minders, right? We mind the minders. We must keep an eye on everyone, from Elon Musk to Donald Trump to all of them. That's the mechanism. That's why the Constitution is what it is. That's why our founders said, no, this is a delegation from the people. That's why Ben Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it. If you go on autopilot, you're going to lose it. So it's the power of the people. Why is this the Second American Revolution? Because if you read the Declaration of Independence, which I threw on my X account, they declared their reason for making a revolution then from England, from the King George. They said in the Declaration that when a government becomes, and I don't have the quote, inimical to the rights of man, the people have in their bodies by their life a natural right to abolish, to restructure so that it suits their purposes. Okay, the more we learn about what we're seeing come out with Doge, there are not billions, but trillions of dollars being given for things that the people did not approve. Full stop. Whether you're right, left, or center. A person, a protagonist, Elon Musk, with also a great protagonist, Donald Trump, the man who survived death. And one of those Trump cases would have literally killed another man from stress or bankruptcy. He did for impeachment, a bullet by the ear protagonist. They're saying we're going to uncover everything and show it to the people. We're already seeing 2.5 weeks in change, aren't we?
Yeah.
Layoffs, funds being cut. We learned yesterday, Artie, and this shocks and angers me, our news entities, newspaper, TV, have been being paid by the state to communicate. That's corruption of what reporting is supposed to be, which is telling the people what's happening.
Yeah.
So there's a major realignment going on. The magnitude in terms of trillions of dollars and the restructuring, elimination of departments of education and others. The change is the biggest change since the first revolution. Yeah. And it's peaceful and it's lawful and it's approved by the people, including those who did not vote for President Trump. You had your vote. The people have spoken. So I see this as being a major restructure, not since George Washington, who had to write all this stuff ad hoc. In New York City, by the way, had to come up with all these ideas. Maybe the gains in property, the Louisiana Purchase, the Civil War, FDR, and the New Deal, maybe those come close, but I see everything being restructured. Maybe you do too. So that's why I call it the Second American Revolution.
Yeah, it's I was reading a book about, presidential second terms, and it's kind of funny because I'm not a history buff or anything like that, but we hear the word dictator used with Trump quite a bit by the left or by his critics. And it was really interesting to see how many times, not to know how many times, but see how frequently that charge has been leveled at other presidents in U.S. history. FDR was one of them. A lot of presidents have been called dictators by their opponents. I think maybe Lincoln was too. But a lot of presidents have. And it's... do you think
John Wilkes Booth, right? Death to tyrants. That was John Wilkes Booth's motivation in assassinating President Lincoln, that he was a tyrant.
This isn't a legal question. Do you worry that people aren't going to accept the truth that comes out because of who the truth is coming out under?
Some are not going to, and I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Is my answer. We have to assimilate the information that we're given. The world is as it is, not as we would like it to be. And I think at least what I do with colleagues and friends who are maybe on the left, Artie, is that I say what I know to be true, and it is true. I was not particularly happy when, for instance, Barack Obama was elected. And so it helps to unite people. I tell friends, I wasn't happy with that guy. You're not happy with this guy. And the world keeps turning. We'll still go to Starbucks. We'll still hang out. We'll still go hiking. The human level, I say humanity, keep it up here. You and I met on X. So you see where that gets tampered. There are many on X that politics is up here and humanity is down here. That's how you disagree. And some will go straight from disagreement to I want to destroy you and your reputation and everything. We're human first.
Yeah.
So we all need to keep that in mind, left, right, center.
Yeah.
There will be turbulence. There may be violence. Nothing is so dangerous. I've learned in my legal career, legal and business, that when people get desperate, when they have an expectation that may be suddenly ended, a legal one or a financial one that they're counting on, that they built their lives on,
Yeah.
there's a fair bit of turbulence coming.
Yeah.
But it's the right thing, I believe, that's being done.
Yeah. I think Trump's going to make some decisions that I disagree with, and I accept that because I believe I don't think you can find a person on earth who I would agree with everything on. But I think my hope is that a lot more good comes of it than bad. And it is interesting to watch the panic among the politicians right now because I don't have objective proof to back this up, but I think it's true. I think a lot of politics, I think there's a lot of money laundering that happens in politics. There's just no reason for our money to be spent so loosely without any oversight. And I I think we can do a lot more with our money if we're tracking it better. We can be a lot more efficient with it. It is funny to watch the reactions from politicians because I'm thinking, well, they're just mad because that the teat has been being taken away from them. Like that's where their power stems from. It's not from just their position. It's actually from being able to, in my opinion, grant favors to people that they are aligned with via, USAID and other things like that.
No, I mean, it's a major realignment. It is a second American Revolution. There will be trauma. There will be all kinds of things, but our humanity is what we need to lean on. Um, our friendship, our community, a lot of that came in for disrepute during COVID. We started to see each other as viruses and risks and not vaccinated or vaccinated. And so maybe there's a plan here. Nothing brings people together. Like think of Burning Man or hiking, camping with people. A common struggle will unite humanity. And so maybe that's a good that comes out of this, that people say, hey, we were crossways in COVID, but we're here in change, and let's look at our humanity to see us through.
Yeah.
We're not here for
Yeah, I
political
love.
parties. We're not here for political
Yeah.
parties, or we shouldn't be, I don't think.
Well, yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I think we need to look past like if you voted for a Republican, that's not all who you are. That's like a very small part of who you are. And I think people think that like if you vote for somebody, you just support every single thing that that person says or does. But in reality, like me, I voted for Trump, but it was pragmatic. It was like I think I think Kamala Harris is a bad choice. I like the coalition that Trump has around him right now, which I actually, in retrospect, I like the fact that he lost the 2020 election, or that that Biden was. I'm happy that he wasn't president for the last 4 years because I think it gave him a chance to put that coalition together, step back, and kind of see, okay, these are the people I don't want in my administration again. And then these are the changes that we need to make. I mean, we saw a lot of people come together for his campaign. I don't think he would have won had it not been for RFK, for Tulsi, for people like that supporting him and like basically going over to the other side of the aisle and like, this is the guy that's actually better fit for our country. So
2 years ago, RFK, you asked me about RFK Jr. 2 years ago, he's a hard left. He's a hard left environmentalist attorney,
yeah,
a dynamite winning lawyer, but part of the New York left. But yeah, just look at what happened. Trump
yeah,
being in the wilderness,
yeah,
like what's his name, Winston Churchill,
yeah,
when he had his wilderness era, and then he retooled and said, "Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard also left." People should be confident on those two sign-ons
Yeah.
You know, some on the left want to just hang it to, oh, they've been whatever, body snatched or no, they're the same people. And again, I
Yeah.
see the seeds in
Yeah.
COVID in that too. The COVID thing is not a right left paradigm. Some try to make it that for political advantage. COVID was a human paradigm. COVID was a human paradigm. I remember having one of our children birthed, and the vaccine thing, not to get into, but over the years, the number of vaccines that newborns are supposed to have, is way up here. And so I am pro-vaccine, the vaccines that work, and polio, and, to save lives, but the number and volume of those vaccines. And so at one point, again, I'm outing myself as being more right, more libertarian. We're having a baby born, and my wife's OB. Oh, let's have the baby born in Berkeley. Berkeley, hard left reputation. We were next door in Oakland. Let's go to Berkeley. I said, Berkeley, what about our concerns about the vaccine and whatnot? All these vaccines. Oh, no. That's why I said Berkeley. There is a strain that unites the right and the left, that RFK is right in the center of that. Again, like I said earlier, that your body belongs to yourself.
Yeah.
Right or left, you don't want someone to coerce your medicine. And so whether you're right or left, coming out of this COVID experience that we've had, where the state said, take the medical procedure or I'm telling your boss to fire you, and I'm the president, take it or I'm going to make your boss fire you.
Yeah.
That I think is a positive, unifying conversation. Hey, we get our bodies back again. Everybody wants that.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been interesting to watch some of the, because I come from the left, I would say. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016, and it's been really weird to watch people who I would think would have been very critical of the FDA 10 years ago now claim that we need to keep things exactly as they are because Trump is appointing RFK, and they would have supported RFK being HHS secretary had he been nominated under any other president. But because it's Trump, it's bad in their eyes. And it's...
No, in that case I talked about, another example from my law background, the case of the guy with the truck with the signs, and you probably guessed it. The issue was abortion. Okay, that was his, I don't, share, that was his thing that he cared about. And we associate that with the right. And so I'm working this case, and I befriended a guy in Berkeley, of all places, hard left, ponytail. Yeah, man, they can't do that. He's in public, blah, blah, blah. And if you would have asked this lawyer, well, what's your, he's probably opposite ways, this guy, on that issue. But he said, wait, they can't do that to the person. You can't, you can't let the man do that. So we're seeing a lot of that. It's exciting that people don't know how much their freedom benefits them. And maybe they'll go in resistant and start to feel, wait a minute. Yeah, I can take my baby to the doctor, and the doctor's not going to say, you're late. 7 shots for your baby. Yeah. Everyone benefits from the exercise of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to agree with somebody's speech to defend it. I like that. Is it John Locke? I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. That kind of.
That's
I
Voltaire.
think we need to get back to
French
that.
philosopher Voltaire. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think we need to get back to that kind of mentality. I think was it the ADL? They defended Nazis' right to protest back, I think, in the 90s or 80s or something like that.
Maybe it was Skokie, Illinois. We went over that case in constitutional law, and the Nazis got a permit to march in the parade with their uniforms.
Yeah.
And the community happened, many people don't know, the community happened to be very largely Jewish. That's a fact that I didn't learn then, learned later. So it was a legit provocative move by a bunch of idiots who wanted to wear the costumes and go. And they secured a permit. So they had the legal right to march in that parade. And the organizers, quite, I think, reasonably said, hell no, no way. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said what you said. You know, you may not like it. They're idiots. They're not allowed to break the law or induce others to break the law by breach of the peace, causing violence, urging violence. But if they want to march around like idiots, they have that right. So that's the law. Unpopular speech. And it's topical to Twitter, isn't it? It's topical to X. I saw this thing about Elon not too long ago, Artie, saying some of the content on X is too negative. We have to do something about negative content. And so I started throwing up, go on Grok, and I'd make these neon image, protect negative speech. Because I said, wait a minute, no. The negative speech is the one that they're going to, you know, like a camel's nose under the tent, get rid of the Nazis, and then eventually you're the Nazi. That's human nature. So,
yeah, we've seen that happen multiple times in history. It happened in the Soviet Union. The kulaks were a very specific group of people, and then it started to be just everybody. Everyone was persecuted as a kulak eventually, and yeah, it happens.
Or in China,
many times.
in Mao's China, you start finding your enemies, and the more enemies you find, the more enemies you find. That's a human nature thing. And the more friends you find on the positive side, the more friends you find. We see what we see. And so during this time, we may have turbulence in the government and in society. We should see our friends again after COVID, our fellow humans.
Yeah.
So,
Cyrus,
I'm getting up on time. I'm sorry to talk so long.
Yeah, I want to wrap up now. I love to ask people about books they recommend. You already mentioned Beyond the Constitution. Any other books you think people would benefit from?
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl, Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning must be read. It is an operating guide for humanity. The brief on it is Viktor Frankl was an eminent psychologist in Austria. He happened to be Jewish during World War II. He and his wife were taken into concentration camps, separated. They would separate men and women. So his wife was taken away. And he spent years in the prison camp. And he watched men live and he watched men die. And he was a psychologist. So he decided to make his own, he had time on his hands. Let's put it maybe dark humor. He had time on his hands, so he decided he's going to make a psychological study about it. That's what the book is, Man's Search for Meaning. And one little vignette I can give you is he said that man has one final freedom, and he always does, and no one can take it away from them. And you know what that freedom is, Artie? Have you read it? Have you read this book?
I have. It's been a little bit. It's the freedom to. I'm not going to get exact, but it's basically the freedom to choose your internal state. I'm
sorry to quiz you. He said man has one final freedom that can never be taken away from him, and that is the freedom to choose, to decide how to react to what happens around him. You can do it in any life circumstance. Can I cuss? Sorry. Shit's going to happen. You can choose always how you will act in the face of shit happening. And Man's Search for Meaning lays that out. People like online media. I'll give you my online media mastermind. Read Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich. Look at videos by Earl Nightingale. He used to make these records on personal improvement. You could find them all on YouTube. Earl Nightingale. The next guy that picked up the mantle was a guy called Bob Proctor. Proctor, Bob Proctor videos on YouTube. And then my current jogging buddy that when I go on my 7 a.m. jog is David Goggins. David Goggins is a study in humanity that everyone should be familiar with, male or female, athletic or not athletic. He says that the stuff that you want is on the other side of the shit that you don't want to go through.
Yeah.
So good advice.
Yeah. Cyrus, before we
and I
wrap
want to
up,
share
can
a
you
video.
tell?
I'm going to send you a video. Last guy is Chase Hughes. Chase Hughes is a 20-year military intel guy, interrogator. He is a psychologist, I think not non-credentialed. He's a behavioralist. So he would interrogate these Guantanamo Bay guys and various other things. He's the smartest guy in the world on human behavior, observation, and conducting our own to influence the world. I'll send you a video that he dropped this morning that I put on my X that made me cry, showed my wife, it made my wife cry. My wife texted it all the family chat. And the theme of the video is, it's time for you to come back. Time for you to come back. What does that mean? Last literary reference is Robert Greene, Greene. Robert Greene, the 48 Laws of Power, 49?
48.
Robert Greene. He said, you want to advance in life? And I read this a year ago, Artie, and I started it a year ago, and it's made a huge difference. Robert Greene said, go back to when you were 8. Take your mind space back to 8 before all the limitations.
Yeah.
And spend time with yourself. So the Chase Hughes video states basically that thesis. Yeah. And if you don't think it's hokey, I'll share it with you. Maybe you can put it underneath for the viewers. It's a literally 4-minute life-changing thesis.
Yeah, definitely will. Cyrus, it's been amazing talking to you. I really appreciate you being here with me today. Before we wrap up, I just want to hand it over to you to tell listeners where they can find you, where they can find out about GIST, and anything else you want to share.
Artie, it is my honor. I'm a guy trying out in a new industry, AI for law, so I'm a total piker. And I just so appreciate the honor of you inviting me to talk and get into other big issues, because if you follow me on X, it's AI Council Dallas. So on X, find me there, please. Follow me. I'll follow you at AI Council Dallas. I talk about AI and law and life as we have here, current events. I have a Substack, which is aicouncil.substack.com. My website is cyrusjohnson.com. So no dashes, no dots, cyrusjohnson.com. You can reach me any of those 3 places. And I'd be happy to become your friend, because that's what life's about.
I love it. Cyrus, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Love to have you back on sometime. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Artie, an honor. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, thank you.